What's going on, folks? Welcome to Got Your Back post-game live stream edition. Getting set to join Jason Strudwick in just a moment. How you feeling, Oiler fan? Yikes. That was a tough one. An ugly one. Team hasn't thrown a lot of games that bad out there lately. But man, when they're bad, can they ever be awful? And that was definitely what we saw out there today. Got Your Back, of course, brought to you by our good friends at Mr. Dirk, located just off White Avenue and 102nd Street. Mr. Dirk is your one-stop shop for all your clothing needs. If you're a businessman needing to look sharp at your next meeting, or if you want to sharpen up your look around the office, they got a wide selection of fantastic suits and shirts and ties, pants, absolutely everything that you need to show that you are on your game when it comes to your dress clothes. They've also got lots of great casual wear as well. It's a fantastic shop for all your clothing needs. Mr. Dirk, just off White Avenue and 102nd Street. And as we check in with Jason Strudwick, Struddy, that was ugly, man. What a tough couple hours for the Oil, hey?
It was a tough one. I think we could all found something better to do than watch that game. But listen, I'm not going to crack out the excuse box, but here we go.
No. Just let's not get into. So we're going to break all this down in a couple of minutes. I just think the overriding thought here that Oiler fans are trying to wrap their head around is their team's not as bad as they look today, right? Like it shouldn't be panic time. Good teams have games like that, but was that bad?
Every team has games like that. It's across the world, and I know these guys are paid, but every team has a game like that, and there's some you're just not going to win, and you're going to lay a complete egg. It would be hard to pick out someone who is like the real hard worker. Like who's the guy like
the Heart and Hustle Award today for the Oilers. Who's getting it, Struddy?
You give out the golden helmet when you're 10 years old, and you're looking around the room, you're like, everyone was thinking about Jimmy's birthday party. No one was thinking about playing the game. So yeah, that was a really hard one. You could tell right away, like from the drop of the puck, it was one of those nights. And unfortunately, it happened against a team like that.
Yeah. No question about it. So listen, if you're listening to this in podcast form after the fact, the Super Bowl has already happened. We hope you enjoyed it. If you're with us here on the live stream, it hasn't happened yet. So we're going to talk a little bit about it here in the moment. By the way, we are live on YouTube and we are live on Twitter as well. For now, I can't promise it'll stay that way through the whole live stream, but I think that's the way we're set up right now. So Super Bowl set to go this afternoon. Nobody cares what I think, Struddy. How are you feeling about the matchup?
The Super Bowl?
Yeah.
I don't think. I have no idea. I want a close game. I'm a Giants fan, and so the Eagles beat the Giants. So I actually hope the Eagles win. Makes my team look better. So
there you go. You got plans? What are you doing?
We're having some people over. It's really important for me to experience this with my kids, or my kids' experience. I want them to get a love of these Super Bowl Grey Cup parties. Like I remember my parents used to have Grey Cup parties, and I loved it. And so we have it. So I'm making the squares right after this. I'm going to make the square sheet, the points. Everyone, no one pays. Obviously, I can't be taking money off the kids, but I have prizes for every quarter, halftime, and final. Some gift certificates. So yeah, I love it, man. I love this whole thing. I'm all about it. I love this Sunday. It's just great.
My only assignment with the Super Bowl is to watch the halftime show because Nielsen is sure to ask me about it on Monday mornings. It's the only thing they ask me about the game is how the halftime show was. So I'll try and tune in for that so I can give my report on Monday.
Rihanna, yeah, it's quite the talent.
It is, definitely. Okay, let's get to the breakdown. Brought to you by DLR Vinyl Products. They supply some of the nicest maintenance-free decking and fencing out there. If you're taking a look into your backyard and you're seeing wood that's going to need to be stained and sanded and repainted in the next couple of years and you're thinking, frustrating, hey, think about going maintenance-free with DLR Vinyl Products. They got locations in Calgary and in Edmonton. It's fantastic stuff. Lasts for years and years. I have it in my backyard. It's awesome. Wouldn't go any other way. So give DLR Vinyl Products a call. Those are my brothers, Rick and Rob, with their locations in Calgary and in Edmonton. So to their specific play here, Struds, like where do we even start? Is it just one of those days and you kind of, on one of those days, all kinds of stuff can go wrong? Or is it a little deeper seated than that? Because you made mention the other day that, they were perhaps getting points and winning games that maybe they didn't deserve. The real nice run of play here was coming to an end, and we saw that today.
Well, it's been a stretch of games on this road trip there against weaker teams. I know they won the game yesterday. I wouldn't say I loved their game. I didn't think they played amazing. Even go back to Detroit, it was good. Like, they won, but again, I wouldn't say it was amazing compared to what the standard they've set. This isn't my standard or your standard. This is what the Oilers, their standard has been set early on in this incredible run they had of 10 or 11 games. So here we are now talking about it. A tough game for them for sure today, and how did they get themselves going? And they didn't come to compete, right? There was no like they had they're halfway out the door, already. They didn't come to play hard. But let's give them a break, right? They're some of the guys are on a vacation. They come back, they go right on the road trip. Now they're they're so close to being home. And I know that feeling, like after a road trip, you just want to get home. You can't wait to get back into your own bed, see your family. And you can sometimes look ahead, especially against a team like the Oilers or the Canadiens. So I am making excuses for them, but I know what that feeling's like. But at the bottom, the rock bottom, they didn't compete hard to start. That gave the Habs confidence, and it gave their goalie a chance to get into the game. And those are the recipe for disaster when you're playing a low team like this.
Yeah, and I think the key word for me there is compete, right? There haven't been that many games this year where you look at what the Oilers put out on the ice and you're like, you really question their willingness to compete at the requisite level to win that game. On a lot of, maybe they make too many mistakes. Maybe their coverages are blown and it's mental errors and those sorts of things. I don't think there have been a lot of nights where you're like, they didn't really show up with the right competitive juice. And I do think today was one of those days. And maybe it is because of, like you say, the tail end of a road trip and they sense that they're almost home. But listen, mature teams, truly mature teams, realize the opportunity. You always measure a road trip. When you go out on a 4-game road trip, you measure that road trip and how you feel on that plane ride back about how you did on the entire trip, right, Struddy? Not what happened that night, but when you're on your way back from a road trip, you're like, won 3 of the games. And sure, there was some ugly play in there, but, overall, the play on this road trip, I didn't like it. I didn't like a lot of it, and though they were able to win a couple of games. So, missed opportunity today to go in against an opponent you should be able to beat. Just make sure you bring the right stuff so that on that flight home, you're feeling great about this road trip. Real missed opportunity. And I think bit of a maturity issue there from this group, bringing what they brought today.
This isn't uncommon, though. I believe that the Leafs lost to the Columbus Blue Jackets last night.
Yep.
And so, that's pretty similar, right? Pretty similar thing. So it does happen. But I love your point you make. They get what, 5 points out of 8 on this road trip, which isn't disaster. But I think when you look at the opponents, you want more. But at the end of the day, I'm not so worried about their points. It's about the way you play. And they didn't on this road trip, specifically today. There weren't enough times of long stretches of really dominating play. You think about, I think it was the Habs' second goal tonight or this afternoon. They were in the Oilers zone for, it felt like 5 minutes. It just kept going back, and the puck couldn't quite get out. Just missed a chance to get it out, or missed a poke check, or missed a defensive assignment. And that's what we expect from the Oilers. That is what I've come to expect, not because of they've set that standard and they didn't bring it. So tough one, but it's about getting back. And that's why I felt uncomfortable this weekend. I called it 1-1, on Gregor's show on Friday. And I just was like, doesn't feel something's not right, and they're not going. So the good news is they get home, day off tomorrow, practice Tuesday, and then Detroit again Wednesday. Yeah. And Kulak's going to fight Fabry at center dot at the beginning of the game to get everybody fired up.
So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Leon Draisaitl. We're going to talk about Evan Bouchard. We're going to take your comments on Twitter and on YouTube as well. And we're going to go to the Weiss Johnson soundbox right now and hear from some of the principals involved. Vinny Desharnais with a real honest assessment after the game.
Bad start. We're not ready. We don't have any excuses. We just got to be ready. They were ready. They were in our faces. They blocked shots. We didn't. They just played better.
Okay, to the Weiss Johnson Twitter mentions, Kerry J says, every team gets up for the Oilers, never an easy one. I think there is some truth to that. When McDavid and Draisaitl are rolling through town, you're not going to catch a lot of teams on what would be off nights for them. And so I think there's definitely something to be said for that as well. Struds, let's go to Leon Draisaitl here. So let's talk about some specific things that we saw. The lack of back check on the one goal, it was the 5-2 goal, right? So the score is 4-2 at that point in time. It's not an ideal situation, but you're still very much in the game at that point. Draisaitl on the tail end of, I think it was a pretty long shift, but no back check at all. Then fast forward, Bouchard made the brutal mistake on the shorthanded goal, but it was Draisaitl with a turnover back in the offensive zone. This is multiple games in a row now where we're talking about Leon Draisaitl not playing very good.
No, and he hasn't. He hasn't been right for sure on this since returning from the All-Star game. I'm not too worried about Leon. Like Leon, I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to find where he needs to go. But something I've noticed with Leon is when he looks tired, he's not moving his feet, he kind of reaches to make passes. So he's almost hunched over and he's reaching and making those passes. Even when he shoots, he's kind of hunched over.
With his feet not moving.
That's right. Because he's just a half step behind or not quite there. And you can kind of see it tonight, right? And you know what? Unfortunately, when you're the second guy on the team, it really stands out when you aren't moving your feet and skating the way you need to be. And it's tough. It's a tough one. But on long term, I'm not worried about. Leon's not the guy to be worried about. He's very competitive. But I think it's getting to the point where now he's got to start finding his game again, right? Getting those wheels going. And I honestly, man, I put him back at center. I think it makes him skate more there, covers more ice. I don't know. It seems like they're happy to have those two together, but I put him back at center starting Wednesday. I really would.
Yeah. I know you're not worried about him. I'm not worried about him either.
Yeah.
And especially in the big picture. He's going to be Leon Draisaitl. We know that, right? So we know that. But how many games in a row is okay for a guy like him to clearly not be bringing the right stuff? Like, is it 3 games? 4 games? Like, how many games before you will go, what's up with Draisaitl and really feeling like, okay, this is getting to be concerning now, and he needs to pull himself out of this funk, because this team is in a playoff chase. They are not locks by any stretch, and they know that, Struds. So knowing the position they're in, you would expect Draisaitl to not stay in this funk for even as long as he has already.
Well, how many games do you think he's at? 4?
Since the break, for sure.
Yeah. Since the break. Yeah.
I'd say you have to get really.
For a superstar like this, you have to get to 10. I think you got to get a month. I think it's got to be a month before I'd really start to panic. But I do think I really think having him at center will give him. When I've seen him play his best hockey, and I'll say 2 times. One was in the playoff run against Anaheim, or that Anaheim year. What was that? 17, 18, whatever year it was. I'm not good with years. And then last year against in the playoffs, he was at center again. I just think when he's at center, I think he just feels he has to take control, and not that he defers to Connor. Like, don't get me wrong, but I just feel that he has there's a bigger presence when he's at center. And I know he likes playing with Connor, and everyone would like to play with Connor, but I really think they got to get him back at center. I really feel strongly about that, and I've been thinking about that for a bit now.
Yep. No, and I think that's a fair point. We'll see what Jay Woodcroft does here. Costin, by the way, not in the lineup today after taking that bump yesterday, although that's not believed to be long term. Let's go to Evan Bouchard. So I'll give you a couple of things that I noticed far before that lost battle happened. Not the 2-0 goal. Where is it here? Okay, second period, right after the 3-0 goal against. So they're down and they're in a bad spot. Bouchard hops over the boards after that goal. The first thing he does is a bad turnover in his own end, in a moment where your team is scrambling and you're trying to find your footing. Yeah. So turnover there. Down a little bit further into the game. Once again, very next shift after a goal, Evan Bouchard, a bad turnover that ends up getting his team hemmed into their own zone. First shift of the third period. His first shift where the Oilers, remember, they were back in the game at that point in time. It was 4-2. Turnover. First shift of the game in his own end, another turnover. And then what we witnessed there on the power play, which is, I mean, you cannot get outworked in that situation that badly. That was brutal. So tough afternoon for him in what has been a fairly tough season.
I'm going to read a tweet here from Soupy_Pigeon. Classic name. Does Bouchard have the internal intensity required to be a champion? So unfortunately for Evan Bouchard, his natural body language is one of very relaxed, shall I say, very chilled and very relaxed. And I think at times that's a good quality to have. But when you're being viewed by your peers or teammates, coaches, media or fans, at times it can really come off when you aren't. It doesn't feel like you're in the game and grinding it out like Ryan Smith with your tooth hanging outside your cheek. Like it's hard to sell. So I think this narrative of Bouchard being a bit lazy, I think part of it's perpetuated because of the fact of his body language and just the way he naturally is. But today he had a tough night, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. I don't think that Evan is always understanding of the situation, right? So the shift after a goal for or against is massive. It's a massive shift because
first shift of a period.
First shift of the period. You're trying to, you're trying to regain or keep the momentum. So, you want to make everything crisply and sharply and move that puck up to where it needs to be quickly, get it up out of your zone or get it into their zone. Even he's shooting pucks this year. And I think I've made this comment before, but it feels like he's taken an extra second to shoot it just a little bit casually. Right. Yeah. So it's is it the Duncan Keith factor? And I want to cycle back to what happened with him, but it seemed like there was just a little more zip to his game. And I hate using those adjectives, but I think everyone knows what I mean. Just a little more jump and go and get going. So he had a tough night. He wasn't alone. He was not alone. Like, let's not make this out to be the Bouchard issue, but he's got to find that understanding of every situation is different. And I think that's what truly separates, I think, good hockey players from great hockey players and Connor, here's an example. Connor McDavid, the game's tied. He's like, I'm going to get one. And he gets a goal. And how often do we say Connor McDavid scores, an important goal, right? And just that sense, or making the right save, or Montreal today, that killing that 5-on-3. I know they got scored on right after. That is recognizing the moment. I don't think Evan has that just yet.
Mention here on YouTube, Sean says, I don't think Bouchard is lazy. He lacks urgency. He gives up on plays. Even on the power play today, he took his time getting to pucks. It's super frustration. For sure, I can see how that would be really frustrating for Oiler fans. Yeah. Brent Smith says, time to move Bouchard. Way too soft and can't defend. Supposed to be offensive defenseman with no offense. I will disagree that it's time to move Bouchard because he's not redeemable. What I would say is that if there's a move involving Bouchard that brings you back something really, really good that helps you in the moment, right, there is a redundancy between Bouchard and Barrie. So I could understand if the Oilers chose to move Evan Bouchard given that redundancy. But I wouldn't be moving him because he's not redeemable and he never will be this and he never will be that. He's still a really young defenseman, Struddy.
Yeah. No, there's giving up on young defensemen. Jeff Petrie, might want to talk about that one, the wrong decision, right? You got to be really patient. And it's hard. Like today, a night like tonight, I mean, he gets 2 points, so part of him probably feels pretty good. But he's like, it's that, again, I don't think he's lazy. That's what people thought I was saying. That's not it. But just that, I love the word urgency, understanding that, boom, I've got to make a sharp, quick play. And it's just not there right now.
Evan Bouchard does not sense danger quick enough. I've said it since the first training camp I saw him in. I went, this guy's not aware of what's going on around him enough. When you're watching him and you're like, oh, like you get, and just, whoa. And it happens all the time. And it's happened through his entire NHL career. There have been pockets of time where he seems to have picked it up on the sense of urgency front, where he had a little more intensity and sense of urgency. I thought in the playoffs he was better sometimes on that front because he had some tough moments on that front as well. I don't know, Struddy, is sense of urgency something you can develop mid-career, or is that a hockey sense thing that you either have or you don't have?
Well, that's just, it's kind of just, it doubles up what I talked about, that idea of understanding the moment. And I don't think he doesn't quite have, but honestly, at times I feel like he doesn't have it offensively, right? Like just, and that expresses itself with the pucks, shooting the pucks from the blue line. Like, you got to get it through quick. And this is unfair comparison, but like Darnay, he understands that every shot he gets from the point has got to get through. And I'm not suggesting he's a power play quarterback, but he gets those pucks through. And at times, Bouchard is just a little bit casual, right? And just kind of pulls a little slow. And I want to see a little quicker. Boom. Yeah. So I think urgency is the right word, and just understanding where you're at. Like you talk to kids that are 12, 15, 17 about this, right? This guy's in the NHL, and I'm sure Dave Manson reminds him constantly, hey, just big shift here. We got to get this going, and unfortunately, sometimes there's some very hard lessons to be learned, because it would have been a humbling day for him, for everybody, but for him today, for sure.
I think they should have benched Evan Bouchard after that mistake, but I understand why they didn't. It would not have made sense to bench Bouchard and keep playing Draisaitl. I think the standard, there's some times where you can get away with a different standard between your star player and the rest of the group. But in that moment, if you bench Bouchard and kept playing Draisaitl was that bad. So I get why they didn't, but that would have been a spot where I'd have said, you need to send the message to the guy again. Yeah. And I'm not trying to be hard on him, but I just think there's certain points in time where it's like, what do you do? But they kept playing him.
I think you can slow his minutes down. Benching though, like, you would have had to bench half the team today. Like, let's be honest. There wasn't a lot of spirit.
I saw enough from bench. 2 today. I'd have been comfortable with that for number 2 today, Struds.
But when everyone's at their lowest, you're going to pick one of the lowest guys off. I don't know. That's a tough one. I understand what you're saying, but I just think I would just slow his minutes down, right? Play him every third time is right. Whatever.
Let's get back to the Weiss Johnson Soundbox. 45 years in the business. Should you need a new furnace, garage heater, air conditioner, hot water tank, any of those things serviced, Weiss Johnson is a great place to go. And they're a great place to buy right now because they got some great deals going on. If you get a new furnace, AC, or heat pump installed in February, you get $500 worth of gas cards. So nice little promotion that they have going. Also, anyone who gets an estimate for a furnace, air conditioner, or heat pump, get entered into a draw for a pair of tickets to an Oiler game where they are sure to play better than they did in this game tonight. Here's Jay Woodcroft.
Oh, I don't know. I think I didn't love our game the entire game. But, we try to, fight back, and, we weren't able to kill that power play. They were able to get 2 power play goals on us. Our penalty kill has been a real strength here over these last 6 weeks or so. And, we just weren't as detailed as we normally are on it. And it's the National Hockey League. They made us pay when we weren't on top of our game.
Yep, they definitely made them pay. Not that we're trying to pull positives out of an awful game, but let's talk about Vinny Desharnais and what he continues to bring to this group. At a moment tonight where momentum needed swinging, he was one of a couple of players that engaged. Evander Kane engaged as well. And not that he specifically tried to do this, took one of their best defensemen out of the game through that intention to do anything necessary to spark help for his team. He had that intention. It worked. Another solid night for him as far as I'm concerned. He wasn't perfect, but he brought what he had.
Took a couple off the chin on the PK, right? So that's always hard for a guy who takes pride in that. I'm not saying he's directly responsible, but that's a tough one.
Out there when they go in, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you just don't want to be standing there. But I love that he understood the moment. So we talked about Evan Bouchard understanding the moment, and Desharnais clearly did, right? So Evander Kane's in there, getting after it. And he goes after the big guy, right? And jumps in there and, had a pretty good fight. Doesn't look like he's a natural fighter from what I saw, but it was a pretty good fight. Unfortunately, he got hurt, or his opponent, got hurt. But you know what? He understood it. He went in there, and I love that he took that fight. I think that sends a strong message that I don't want to fight all the time, but if I need to, I'll go in and take on one of the tougher guys in the NHL.
I sent a tweet asking people for their thoughts on the game, Struddy. I'll let you go to that tweet and see if there's anything that you want to bring up there. RD Express Pro says Boosh showed he could be urgent in the Flames series. He was instrumental in their series clincher, and that's the thing. That's the frustrating thing, when the other commenter talking about feeling frustrated. It's because he has shown at times that he can have that in his game, and I thought Bouchard was pretty good in the playoffs in his first rip through. So he's shown that exists somewhere within him, but it's understanding and maturing as a player and bringing that more often through an 82-game regular season with the same sense of urgency that a playoff series has. You still need to be able to access that through more of your 82-game regular season, and it's not present enough in Bouchard's game. So he's not bringing the offense this year. The sense of urgency is struggling. Defensively, he's been suspect. There have been a lot of elements of his game, and he is in a very low confidence state, I would suggest, right now this season. And so it's not going to look great for him. But when he is high and his confidence goes up, there's so much to like. And sometimes these young guys, Struds, you got to ride that confidence wave with them.
You do, and it's part of it. You got to just, Ken Holland has been nothing if not patient with these players, right? Just patient, and you've got to be, and just keep, trying to help them and shepherd them in the right direction, and hope they kind of figure it out as you go along. I mean, the team's in pretty good shape, but there are a few areas that could be reinforced. And Bouchard's one guy. I think that if I'm looking at guys like McLeod, Broberg, Skinner, I think they've all kind of taken steps forward. I think I'd put Bouchard more in the Yamamoto, Puljujärvi camp.
He's regressed.
Yeah.
Never mind taking a step forward. He's regressed flat out.
And they haven't, they're looking for internal growth from those. Imagine if they had internal growth from those three guys.
Yeah.
If those three guys were either playing in case of Yamamoto, healthy, but they all took a step forward and they progressed even a 5%. Because I think they've actually all come back. All three of those guys, right, have kind of regressed from what we expect from them. Imagine what this team could be doing. And that's the difference between perhaps, 1, 2, 3, or 4 rounds in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Any comments you want to get to Studs before we
I'll get this one from JKC Baker. 3 games in 4 days with travel between each game plus morning skates, morning starts, maybe a valid reason for the effort. They'll bounce back. And I do think we have to be careful, to take too much out of this game. But what
about the trip? Can you take enough out of the trip?
So if the 3 games prior were full marks efforts and going for it, I'd be like, okay, I can understand that. But
exactly.
I kind of felt this one's coming. So I hope it's, what you call maybe a bit of a wake-up call. And it's crazy that we're talking about having a wake-up call after, what did they get? Was it 18 points?
Yeah.
Whatever.
10 straight or something like that.
Yeah, they got a ton of points. These last, 10 games. And we're talking about, they need a wake-up call. But I think it's just, I want to say their game needs a reset, right? Just get back to the details. I'm sure that Jay will revisit that on Tuesday at practice.
They need to get back to their reset. Their game already had a reset, and then they did great. And then somewhere it's that reset got reset, and now it needs to be reset back to the other reset. And I think that's why we're talking about it, Struds, is because good teams that want to win a division, good teams that want to be a Stanley Cup contender, it should be a big deal when your game is not where you want it to be for 4 games. And it's not been where they want it to be, I would say. In the big picture, it's not been where they want it to be for 4 games. And so that should be a big deal on a competitive team, and the standards should be high, and they should be frustrated with themselves, which I'm sure that they are, by the way.
Yeah, and I think you look at the timing of their break and bye were probably the worst timing could have happened, right?
Because they were going so good.
Yeah, and it does derail you, right? It happens.
Okay, back in action against Detroit on Wednesday, the New York Rangers on Friday. Erik Karlsson did a pod yesterday with Chris Johnston, who, of course, had the report that the Oilers were engaged in trade discussions with the San Jose Sharks. You were not on that podcast. For some reason, I chose to give you the day off yesterday, which that's BS. That's far too soft as a boss here.
It was the best pod you've had in months.
Gregor really brings it, I will say that. Yeah. Okay, we're going to deal with Karlsson in our takeaway segment, brought to you by Sherwood Buick GMC. The number 1 GMC dealership in Canada, 5 years running. And I can't stress to you enough how accommodating they are when you go in there and are looking for a vehicle. I recently picked up a new truck from Sherwood Buick GMC, great sales staff, awesome showroom. And the other nice thing about that dealership is they have vehicles. They're not one of those places you go in and they don't have anything to show you or let you ride. So real solid. Highly recommend going to Sherwood Buick GMC just off Baseline Road on the way into Sherwood Park. Go see Phil and the crew at Sherwood Buick GMC. So multiple times this year, we've heard the Oilers have engaged with the San Jose Sharks over Erik Karlsson. Dregs was the one that mentioned it first, and not that he's in this town, but he basically got run out of this town when he made mention of it. And here we are a few months later, Chris Johnston reporting that they continue to engage in these discussions. What do you think, Struddy?
Well, I heard your podcast yesterday. And you couldn't have got two better guests, right? I chose the right day to lay an egg. Karlsson, I just don't know how you can figure that out money wise. You hear there's reports of 18% and Oilers wanting 40 or 50%. And it feels like this is the move. If you do this move, this is it. If you do indeed trade 3 first rounders, there are no more first rounders to trade away while Leon is under contract with the Oilers. And he could resign, so I'm not saying. But you better be 100% sure that this is the final piece that you're needing. And that to me is scary. Karlsson, I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a great defender. At the end of the game, are you going to put Karlsson out with Nurse?
Just hang on a sec. I'm going to challenge you real quick. You think he's a good player? Do you think Erik Karlsson's a good player, or is he arguably the best defenseman in the game right in this moment? I just want to properly frame the year that he's having. I mean, once in 30 years, a guy can put up 100 points from the blue line.
Well, Roman Yossi got 99, or didn't he, or 98 or something?
So maybe once every 2 years.
I've seen that too, and let's get off that a little bit. Like that's being a bit dramatic. Are we talking about Roman Yossi, the best D-man in the year?
But so do you think Erik Karlsson is a good D-man, or are you understating that a little bit?
I think that he's a very offensive defenseman.
Okay.
And he's offensive. He offends me defensively as well. So
well played.
Yeah. So I think you've got a 1-goal lead at the end of the game. Is he the guy you're going to choose to put out there to protect that?
I think it depends. He's the guy. No, it depends on how his night is gone. He's one of those guys where there's some nights you don't, and there's some nights you do.
So do you think about that when you put Makar on the ice?
No.
Or Victor Hedman on the ice?
No.
Or Drew Doughty on the ice?
No.
Or Parayko on the ice? Or Pietrangelo?
Fair point.
So, I've had a lot of time to think about this. So I was prepared for you. And I knew this was going to come up today, so I was prepared. And I
Did you do homework on your day off?
Yeah, I did. But I did a lot of reflecting. And so do the Oilers get better with him in there? 100%. Yes, they 100% do. But, if you get him, there's no more draft capital. There's no other first rounders to trade before Leon his contract's up. And so you better be sure. So, do you always want to have one of Nurse or Karlsson on the ice? Yeah, that makes it pretty good. There's no doubt.
Sure.
That'd be pretty good. The idea of making the power play better to me it's crazy. I don't know why would you want to do that? So
why would you risk messing with it?
And why do you have to make it better? Like, it's already great. If anything, you want to be defending better. So if that is the ultimate goal, to defend better 5-on-5, is this guy the guy?
So the counter argument to that would be, by the way, I'm kind of being devil's advocate here. I don't necessarily think it's the right idea, and we can get into that after, but I'm just being devil's advocate to the points you're bringing up. Devil's advocate would be, what makes him a great defender? The fact that he is so damn good at getting the puck on his stick and getting it moving in the right direction, because he's a brilliant puck mover. But I think your point is there are still points in tight games where you need to be able to defend important moments. It's not all just about passing it well.
Yeah, and he is great at that. And I should be fair. He is a great defenseman. I was being a bit cocky, but
I had to keep you honest. You had the day off yesterday.
And a little sluggish today. But it's a very interesting. To be honest, part of me wants to see it happen, because I'd love to see this guy wheeling, dealing, throwing passes around to Connor. Like, is there a better passing defenseman in the NHL? Like, this guy's really, really good at passing.
He's got more even strength points than McDavid.
Yeah, which is, So, but it just feels like this is it. This is your move. If you're going to, because really, what else can you do after that? You could trade prospects, but it's not just the capital or the draft capital you're giving. It's also the cap you're giving up, right? This is our guy. Even if you get it down to $7 million or $8 million, whatever it is, man, that's a big piece of the pie. So I don't know. I probably lean towards not doing it, but part of me would really like to see it.
So here's the argument that I made yesterday, and I'll present this to you, and you can tell me what you think about this. So the problem with Erik Karlsson, even if you get them to retain 40%, and then you move out enough people to bring him in, the problem is I don't believe there's any way to bring Erik Karlsson in and also keep Tyson Barrie here.
Oh, yeah.
So Tyson Barrie's got to go out in order for the money to work. And the problem, Struds, is that if you spend like 2 first-round picks on a top prospect or 3 first-round picks or whatever the ask would be, and let's be clear, for the Sharks to retain 40% of Karlsson's salary, the ask would be monumental. So let's talk about 3 potential first-round type assets. The problem is for the Oilers to make it work, Barrie's got to go out, who, by the way, the Sharks aren't really going to need Tyson Barrie for their rebuild. So Barrie goes out. So you haven't added Erik Karlsson to your lineup for the cost of 3 first-round picks.
Right.
You've added the difference between Barrie and Karlsson. Right? That's all you've added. If Tyson Barrie is a 6 out of 10 defenseman and Erik Karlsson is a 9 out of 10 defenseman, if you punt Barrie and bring in Karlsson, you've factored up by a power of 3 points. You have not added 9. And that's the thing. If you could add Karlsson and keep Barrie, great. I think you can add Chychrun and keep Barrie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. You're improving a specific position, but you're not, adding a ton to your team, like as far as another player.
The difference between the two.
Point. Yeah. So it's just those 3 first rounders and you're unable to do anything else. And I look at it like, if San Jose really wants to trade him, why does it have to be 3 first rounders? I know he's a really good player, but are you not trading the contract in a lot of this thing? And I know the Oilers are asking for him to keep it, but like, I don't know. What is a first rounder worth? Like in a cap hit, what is it worth? Like I remember Marleau was traded for a first rounder, right?
Yeah.
Down to Carolina.
What was he, $5 million or something on the cap, or 6 million, whatever it was? Yeah.
Yeah. So then is that each first rounder? You have to pay a first rounder for each one of those? You know? And then it's also limiting, and I said it's limiting your opportunity to do anything else later on. So, there's 2 groups of people. Those that function in the world where they think Leon and Connor are probably going to leave, or they're worried about that. And then there's another group of people, which I'd probably be in, which is constant improvement, constantly adding and improving your team. I'm probably more in that group. This is a big swing, a really big swing. And you've got to get it right, because if not, you don't have any other swings to take. This is the biggest one you can take under their heading.
So Jacob Chychrun healthy scratched for, quote, trade reasons, according to the team. I reported after, this isn't the Oilers. The Oilers aren't close on a deal with Chychrun. That's not the deal that is about to happen and why he was held out of the lineup. I don't believe they're that close on Chychrun right now in this moment. I don't believe they're that interested in Joel Edmondson because of the injury history and because of some of the issues that he has had. I think Erik Karlsson is very, very unlikely. I do believe all the reporting from Dregs and CJ that there's interest there, and why wouldn't you look into it? I think it's very, very unlikely. Struddy, I think we're hurtling towards Gavrikov or Gostisbehere. I think that's what this is going to end up boiling down to. Gostisbehere's injured and will be healthy in and around trade deadline time. But this likely becomes Gavrikov as a pure rental. My understanding is Gavrikov is not signing in Edmonton. So pure rental, where the current ask is a first, and Gostisbehere, the other potential option. There are not a lot of great candidates for trade here. McCabe, I don't believe is an option to waive and come to Edmonton. Maybe Toronto, but I don't think Edmonton. This is Gostisbehere. This is Gavrikov. Or maybe something that we don't see yet. I think that's what this narrows down to. And I think they ride the Chychrun thing right to the very end. And if at the last minute, the Coyotes do not get what they're looking for, the Oilers maybe are there still. And then Arizona's willing to do a dirty deal, right? And a dirty deal I mean by, okay, we'll take all of your other stuff and all your cap hits and all that. And there's going to be a team out there that does a clean deal for Chychrun. Just prospects and boom, right? I think this is Gavrikov and Gostisbehere.
Do you have a sense what the cost is for Gostisbehere?
Not sure. I'm not sure. I haven't been able to get a sense on that one, but I think, it would be Yeah, I mean, he's a decent defenseman, and there are some that will say he defends every bit as well as Chychrun does. He doesn't necessarily bring the same level of offense. So you would be up in that, probably the ask is the first, but it's more like you would hope to be able to whittle it down and negotiate it down so it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
And I think the longer you wait, the price probably comes down.
Yeah, so it depends what you're looking for. What are you looking for? You're looking for, a defender or a guy that can move the puck. So, I think he's actually a pretty good puck mover. Did a little research again on this guy. And I was told he's and I know I've seen him play, so I know.
You're talking Gostisbehere now, right?
Gostisbehere, yeah. He can really move. He can really deliver the puck on his skates, on the sticks, and he's pretty. He's that's what and he's had a good year. He's had a really good year, and leaving Philly to go to Arizona, he's actually had to take on a bigger role. This person told me and said that he's kind of grown as a player because there was really no one else. They had OEL, but it wasn't like he was killing it. And they had Chychrun, but he was hurt all the time. So he's essentially being like their number one when these guys are out or whatever. So, he's an interesting name. If that's who it is, I would definitely look around for a centerman up front. I would take a hard, long look at that and figure out what that might look like. I could, case in point, Jonathan Toews. I know there's a lot of hoops to jump through, but a guy that at the end of the game, you're like, who are you putting out there with him? Toews, Draisaitl, and is it Kane or McDavid or whatever? Like, buddy, we got to protect a lead. You got to go out there and do it. You're going to kill penalties, and that's your job here. You're not getting on the power play. In fact, when we're on the power play, close your eyes, and then just get it done. So I don't know. I can't wait to see what happens because I can see both sides of everything, but it felt like when here's an example. When Boston traded for Hampus Lindholm, it felt perfect, right? I was like, God damn, that's a good, what a great decision, And then with the Oilers, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, why can't there be a slam dunk? Like when they got Kane, I don't know that it was like, people were concerned about what was going off the ice, but on the ice, I'm like, that's a slam dunk. Hyman, slam dunk. Campbell, I wouldn't say it was a slam dunk, but I felt pretty comfortable about it. This is like, I could look at Carlson, Chychrun, all those guys, none feel like the perfect fit. I think Ken Holland's, when he's at home eating his chicken fingers watching the Super Bowl, I think that's what he worries about, man. I honestly, honestly, because look at the swing you have to make for these guys, right? So Gostisbehere for a second, yeah, it's going to help. Why not? But is it a slam dunk?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The other name that comes up a lot is Ekholm, and I like him. I think he's a good player. I think he's an honest player. I think he helps you win in the moment, but he's older, right? And the contract is it's not ideal. The cap hit is not ideal, and moving forward, it's certainly it's not ideal either. I'm just pulling it here to make sure that I get it right. Matthias Ekholm, $6.25 million, and he's got 3 more years after this year. And he's in his early 30s here. Yeah. If he was 26.
If he was 27, right? Let's do this. I'm all over it. Again, if it's not a slam dunk, it doesn't feel like a slam dunk. Do you do it? I don't. That's the problem that I have. And so patience, and you wait for that slam dunk to come around. The problem is, you might be waiting for 2 years, right? But
yeah. Back to the Weiss Johnson mentions Ron B. Jazz Flute 2. Okay, Ron says all Oilers media tap dancing around it. Gun to your head. Do McDavid and Draisaitl stay in Edmonton? So that's
a long time away.
Well, it's not that far. It's not that far. We're not tap dancing around it. We talked about it yesterday. Yeah. I do think that does factor into some of the decision making in the moment, though. I do think it has to. Don't you?
Oh, it does. But so let's just call it what it is. I feel that these two guys want to win a Stanley Cup. That's the sense I get. Now, I'm not around them. I don't talk to them, but that's great players want to win a Stanley Cup. So you have to build a team that when they look at it, they look at all the other options. They don't see it. They don't see any other option better than this one. Oh. And if they do leave and to go somewhere like LA or Chicago or Arizona, they're not going there to win. You know what I mean? And you're like, okay, there was nothing we could do anyways, right? So I don't know. You got to keep making it better, the team better. And then you're like, guys, and even if you sign them, let's say they don't want to sign for 8 years, whatever. You say, okay, well, 2 years? Give us 2 more years, 3 more years, whatever. Like, we'll just keep on. Yeah, I think that's the strongest case you can make for them being here. I really do. Is that we are going to win here. Look how close we are because of what we've done and developed and with you guys and everyone around you.
Or they could be saying, listen, we both committed to 8 years. Let's rock and roll. Let's get as much done as we can in that time. And when that time's up, we do what we got to do. Now, if they win between now and that contract being up, does it help their cause? When you win, do you walk together forever and you want to stay together forever and they're tight and their families are tight and girlfriends and all that great stuff. They call each other their ride or dies. So if you win, is it like, awesome, handshakes, way to go, buddy, and Draisaitl goes to chase the money that he's left on the table? Because the only way those two both stay here, Struds, is if they both take very team-friendly deals and have a chance to win. Because if they both take market value to stay here, what are the chances this team can win?
Well, what did McKinnon just sign for? He was 10.5 or something, 11.5.
Oh, yeah, I'll find it here.
Somewhere in there. Listen, and they're going to do what they want to do. Like that's their prerogative. That's why they've been think about it, we'll have had Connor here for 11 years. 11 years is incredible.
12-6.
Sorry, 12-6. I was off by a little bit. So that's probably where Leon probably starts there, right? That's probably where he's at. And then Connor is, I don't know. Connor will probably never get paid what he should be paid, right?
For sure.
For being honest. But again, if let's just say the number for Leon is $12.5 million. In 2 years, which teams could, it's a long ways away, which team could take those guys on, take him on individually, and win a Stanley Cup? It's going to be a small
Depends
list,
on the cap. It just depends on where the cap is.
But even, it's going to be, because you look at the teams, like LA is going to be tied up against it. I mean, the Leafs, if they resign those guys, they're going to be tied up. Carolina, they kind of have their guys signed, don't they? Who am I missing? Boston? Maybe. Yeah. Because some of those guys might be
are going to retire, yeah.
But, so it's a tough conversation.
It's so funny that we are in the window where it is relevant to discuss. I don't think we should fixate on it. I don't think we should spend too much time on it. We talked about it yesterday a bit, and I think it's fair conversation today. And I do think decisions they're making in the moment are made with that in mind to a degree. Yeah. But bottom line, the best thing for McDavid, Draisaitl, for the Oilers, for the chances of them sticking around, is to let those two hoist the Stanley Cup together. I firmly believe that. Build a team around them they feel they can win with, and then the chips will fall where they may. But you can look them square in the eyes and say, well, you can't ever say that the organization didn't give you everything you could possibly need to do this properly. And I think that's important for them to do. And so this trade deadline, man, this window is... This is a flashing green, advanced green light this year where the West is wide open. They have a clear need. What's it going to be? Somebody did ask here. I'll last mention and then I'm going to let you go, Struddy. Someone said, El Marco 93 said, so Jason, what is your type of slam dunk for the Oilers then? What do you think the solution is?
Well, if I had that answer, I'd tell you. I went through every team I looked through. If we're talking for a defenseman, I don't know if there's a slam dunk. They're not on teams that are available, right? Teams that are going to make their players available. I don't think there is one. And that's the problem. I've gone through every team. It's cap friendly, gone through it. I've combed it and I haven't seen one. But I think my sentiment is clear. When they signed some of these other guys, it was a slam dunk, right? It was a slam dunk and haven't got there. So if I had that answer, my name would be Jason Strudwick, GM.
So I'll give an answer for you. I think the best combination of assets out and giving them a chance to win is probably a guy like Gavrikov, I think. He'll bring the fundamental defensive play that you need. Mm-hmm. With assets, you can be comfortable moving. It'll be a disaster if he ends up getting hurt. But I think that's probably a scenario where you get something that significantly helps the team at a reasonable price that's actually a reasonable and realistic target.
Yeah, that might be the guy. That might be the guy. Not a slam dunk. That's a layup, a 3-step Euro step layup. That's what that is.
Good podcast today, buddy. I liked it. I don't know.
On fire. Well, I'm fresh. I took a day off.
You did. You know what? Take tomorrow off, and we'll regroup. And maybe midweek we'll get together again and drop another podcast.
Let's do it.
Thanks, Struds. Have a great day, pal. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Yeah, talk to you later, guys.
All right, cheers. The great Jason Strudwick. That's going to wrap up the podcast, folks. Thanks so much for your involvement. Had a fun here on the live stream. I enjoyed it. YouTube worked. Twitter worked. We're 1 for 6. So, hey. Listen, Oilers play again on Wednesday and Friday, so we're going to try and get a couple more podcasts in this week. Keep an eye on our YouTube page and our Twitter feed as well. Thanks to our sponsors, Mr. Dirk, DLR Vinyl, Sherwood Buick GMC, and Weiss Johnson as well. Have yourselves a fantastic Sunday. Enjoy the game, and look forward to talking to you again real soon, folks. Cheers.